Greetings, I am Toglin, Hell's Harlequin, but you may call me Tog. Today I'm gonna do a video that I've been considering doing for quite some time now. This video is me criticizing Paul Elam, as in A Voice for Men's Paul Elam. Now my darlings, before you freak out, I have nothing against his work towards men's rights, nor do I have any issues with his anti-feminist articles and videos. My grievances with him seems to come from almost direct provocation. He's made it very clear on several occasions that he really doesn't like my type of person, that type of person being a person who suffers from borderline personality disorder. Back in 2011, Paul Elam wrote an article for A Voice for Men entitled BPD, Sick or Just Crazy Asshole. I guess vilifying an entire diagnostics group will totally help men. I'm gonna start this article at the halfway point because that's how long it takes for him to actually start talking about borderline, and I haven't got all day, but I will have the full article linked in the description down below. That brings us to BPD, this individual, typically a female, yes, that is documented. Now, I hate to interject so soon. That statement is true, yet somewhat misleading. In the past, they thought that borderline was a condition that only women could get. But now more and more men are actually being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which previously were diagnosed as other conditions. A lot of researchers believe that borderline might actually equally affect both men and women. Is one whose mental state renders her a significant emotional, psychological, often physical danger to anyone in her life, and in particular men with whom she's become involved romantically. BPD is the indicated diagnosis when some or all of the following are present. A long-term pattern of unstable or turbulent emotions, including frequent displays of inappropriate anger, a pattern of impulsive actions in chaotic relationships, including but not limited to impulsiveness with money, substance abuse, sexual relationships, intolerant and often hostile reactions to being alone, repeated crisis and acts of self-injury such as wrist-cutting or overdosing. One thing to consider is there's actually 9 different criteria for being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, and you only have to fit 5 of the 9. And he basically just listed off the worst of the 9 symptoms. There is such a thing as a silent borderline, which is someone who has the internal thoughts and feelings of a borderline, but doesn't actually act up like a typical one. So you would never know they were borderline unless you actually talk to them in deep therapy. There is a more thorough examination of behaviors common to BPD, but you won't likely find them detailed in diagnostic literature. The following are traits I have drawn upon from personal experience, observing borderline women in a clinical and real-life setting. So keep in mind that this next part is nothing more than Paul Elam's biased opinion on borderlines and has nothing to do with actual diagnostic research. A remarkable facility for lying and manipulating, particularly for sympathy and adulation, but also to enlist action from others that will further their personal objectives for revenge or retaliation. A propensity to make false allegations of rape, sexual abuse, and domestic violence. A near bottomless capacity for revenge over the least or even imagined slights. A sadistic pleasure in causing unwarranted harm to others who are perceived to be enemies, or even those determined to not love them enough. The capacity to justify and rationalize any abusive behavior, no matter how extreme or innocent the victim. No moral compass. The repetitive demand that others sympathize with them, even as they cause destruction in the lives of innocents. The distorted mindset that the abuse they inflict is not abuse, but that objecting to it or fighting back is abusive to them. Since all of that was opinion based on signs and symptoms of borderline, I can tell you that I've met several borderlines in group therapy as well as in my personal life, and most borderlines I have met have been very friendly, very empathetic, and very cooperative people. And my anecdotes are just as valid as his. In fact, why don't we look at the opinion of borderlines from a different licensed clinician?
Now, a lot of my clients that have BPD-like symptoms or are diagnosed with BPD have PTSD or CPTSD, have had a trauma in their life or chronic trauma in their life. And I have videos about that too. I got videos about everything. Make sure you subscribe. Hello. But a lot of them have had trauma in the past. And they describe BPD to a lot of people as emotional burn victims. We're very sensitive. We feel everything really intensely. Now, if we had had a really traumatic past, especially if we had a chronic trauma, it would make sense that we would be a little sensitive. We might be on edge. Things are intense. Things make us really nervous. There are a lot of triggers, a lot of flashback, a lot of things going on that make it really difficult to be present and to just feel emotions without being scared of them. With all of that being said, would you think that maybe having a trauma in your past, maybe having an emotionally absent caregiver would make you a bad person? The answer is no. That doesn't make you a bad person. That just means that you're going to have a certain set of symptoms as an adult that you may have to work a little harder to get through, to process through, to feel okay, to build healthy relationships. Is it impossible? No. Is it difficult? Yeah, but life is difficult. We all have things to overcome.
The link to that video will be down in the description. If you have any mental health issues of your own, I would very much advise checking out her channel. Anyways, let's get back to the article. And one thing must be incorporated into your understanding of the BPD. They are in total control of what they are doing. There is no organic factor or defect in self-control that causes what they do. Their acts are willful and premeditated. They comprehend the difference between right and wrong, appropriate and inappropriate, truth, lies, reality, and fantasy. They frequently hold jobs that involve themselves in social situations where their destructive behaviors would work quickly against them. They perform admirably and demonstrate a respectable capacity for self-control and appropriate behavior. Any notion that they cannot help their actions, which you will hear most frequently from BPDs or unscrupulous clinicians who profit from their conditioning by helping them rationalize their behavior, is completely fraudulent. They know what they are doing and often enjoy it.
There's so many years I blamed other people for just like leaving me or abandoning me, and now I just don't know. I really don't know. Was I just having disassociated moments and demonizing these people and cutting them out of my life, or were these things really fucking, I don't know.
That was a clip from someone personally vlogging about just being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Link will be in the description. Do they suffer tremendously from internal chaos and unstable emotions? Certainly. So do the depressed and alcoholics and those with anxiety disorders and other maladies. We don't offer any of them a pass on hurting themselves and others, nor should we. This is actually one of the few things in the article I will agree with. It's the responsibility of the mentally ill to seek help for themselves. It's not your responsibility to become their human punching bags. Given the absolute potential for devastation that BPD brings in the lives of anyone unfortunate enough to be in their path, it is pretty important to understand the prognosis for their condition. There is no psychiatric medication that treats BPD. There is no known cognitive therapy that works with them. In short, they have an intractable condition that is impervious to treatment of any kind. They cannot be helped near as much as they can be avoided for the sake of helping others. This statement is demonstrably false. For one thing, borderline is better understood than any other personality disorder. And they've found that DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, is the best treatment for borderline. It's even more effective when you combine it with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. The thing is, there is no easy cure for borderline, no matter how you look at it. Because with the two therapies combined, it simply teaches people how to adapt to their patterns of behavior and thoughts, and therefore live a normal life as if they don't have it. They will always have irregulated emotions, but the therapy is actually to learn to live with it. Now, the other thing is that it's not an easy therapy to go through. For most borderlines, it takes 4 to 10 years to go into remission. Only around 10% are capable of going into remission after a year of therapy. Even with that in mind, borderline is far from hopeless or untreatable. There is a running joke among psychiatric professionals about BPDs, and yes, we told jokes about serious problems. It's one of the ways clinicians deal with the stress of working with them. Anyway, it's a simple one-liner. You don't treat borderlines, you ignore them. A borderline's greatest fear is to either be ignored or abandoned, and as a licensed therapist, you conduct yourself in such manners. No wonder you've never seen a borderline recover.
Right? Because people can be professionals, have their own opinions, and not everybody's great at their jobs.
And that, in the broader sense, is also indirect professional advice when it comes to anyone with the misfortune to find themselves locked in the sights of a BPD. Get away from them. Go directly the other direction. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Just get thee away. Chalk whatever losses you suffered up to the experience and be grateful about what you could have lost. Last part of the article, he just reiterates that you should get away from us and we're completely incurable. So I think I'm done with that particular article. At this point, you might be wondering, Lady Tog, is it common for the MRM to have a dislike for borderlines? I went ahead and talked to various MRAs that I know, and no, it does not seem like it's a common viewpoint. I tweeted at Dr. Randomercam to see his opinion on the matter, although I think he misunderstood why I was tweeting at him, cause things did not go very well. He ended up quoting my tweet and making fun of it, so definitely did not go the best it could have gone. I kind of hope he watches this video, I doubt it, just so he can understand why I was trying to engage him on Twitter. Now, another thing you might be asking is, Paul's article was from 6 years ago. Surely he could have changed his opinion by now. Well, let's have a look.
Those with borderline personality disorder, beware. Your whining about how people need to treat you all warm and fuzzy while you're abusing them isn't welcome here, nor any other of your feeble-minded comments about what you wrongly think people owe you. I will cheerfully delete such comments and block you from commenting here again.
Oh dear, that was just from a month ago. Doing a bit of digging, I found I'm not the only one who finds his articles and videos on borderlines to be objectionable. Men's Rights Sydney published an article back in 2014 called BPD, a Men's Health Failure on Every Front. The main bulk of the article is a personal story from a man who's both an MRA as well as has BPD. However, in the last closing paragraphs, he directly addresses Paul Elam's articles and has a response to them, so I will read those for you. But as always, the full article will be in the description. I'm writing this article for two reasons. One is to call into question many apparent misconceptions about BPD in the wider community. The second is to pose a question for those still practicing psychology who would argue that BPD is incurable. If your interpretation of what BPD is all about is valid, and the DBT model of BPD isn't valid, then please provide some or any evidence that disproves or calls into question decades of peer-reviewed studies that confirm its efficiency. Third is viewing an illness that could be affecting anything between 3 and 10% of the male population and is the leading cause of non-psychosis-related suicide as feminine and incurable, not to mention evil, really a great step forward for men's mental health advocacy. Seriously, I really fucking hope not. Because for the men whose entire development of BPD hinged on a traumatic experience involving women will have only one hope for anything approaching recovery: group therapy in a room full of crazy assholes, all of whom are women. Still, I made it. So if nothing else, on this front, I can prove every biased therapist wrong. My name is Jacob. I am a man, and I am not a crazy asshole, and I am healing. One question I commonly get asked is why is it important to remove the stigma of borderline personality disorder? Most people are aware of the very high suicide rate of the trans community, how 40% of trans people will attempt suicide 1 or more times in their lifetime, while 75% of all diagnosed borderlines will attempt suicide 1 or more times in their lifetime, and we make up a much larger population than the trans community. As well as only 5% of the general public will attempt suicide 1 or more times in their lifetime. And out of the general population, 13 out of every 100,000 people will commit suicide. That is only 0.01% of the population, while 10% of borderlines will die by suicide. One thing I really want my fans to keep in mind though is even though I'm disagreeing with Paul Elam on this particular topic, I still agree with him on most things such as feminism and men's rights issues. Hopefully I won't get too much hate for this video, but I'm pretty sure I will. Anyways, these are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I wish all of you a pleasant rest of your day.